How do you win a Bassmaster Elite Series event? So we're going to talk about this and we're going to break it down for you today. I have won 2 of these blue trophies. I'm going to give you what happened in my 2 times that I've won, and I'm going to give you some examples of other Elite Series wins. And it might not be what you think. So as you're watching this thinking, I'm going to figure out how to win my tournament this coming up weekend, a one-day tournament, completely different. Completely different. We could do a whole video on that. Maybe we will, on winning one-day events versus winning a 3 or 4-day event. Now, so a Bassmaster Elite Series event is a 4-day event. A lot happens in a 4-day event that's different than a one-day event. So there's a couple different philosophies that happen. Number one is that when you have a 4-day event, a lot of people think that you find a secret lure or you find the secret location, the secret spot that nobody else has found, that nobody else knows how to fish, and that's how you win a big tournament. That is not how you win a big tournament. You're not pulling out some kind of little crazy minnow or a crazy crawbait or some secret jig head that's going to put you over the top and beat the best 100 anglers in the world on a body of water across 4 days. It's not going to happen like that. Every once in a while, maybe every 3 years or so, you're going to get somebody that finds a spot that is just special and they can keep it to themselves and end up winning a tournament. Every once in a while. So it's not impossible, but that is not most of the time what happens. So let's talk about this one that's right here in front of me. This is the St. John's River 2022, and I was able to win that from day 1 to day 4. I kept that lead the entire tournament, and that is why I won. So what happened was we had a big cold, this is Florida, we had a big cold front the week leading up to the tournament. Even the first day of practice was unseasonably cold in Florida. And I went down there, I tried some new areas. First day of practice, second day of practice, windy, still cold. I went up to Rodman Reservoir, started finding some fish in some deeper channel bends. There was definitely a pattern within those channel bends, and I kind of zeroed that in, and I really got it going on in that practice. But I knew that the third day of practice, the day before the tournament, and then our off day, I knew that the weather was going to be warming up. And then the first day of the tournament, I knew it was going to be fairly warm. We're going to have kind of cool mornings, but it was going to be warming up. In Florida, that water warms up quick. Those fish like to move up. Soon as they want to be up there shallow, they want to be up there feeding, they want to be up there. They do not want to be out there deeper if they don't have to be. But I knew that in that practice, my bite that I had found in practice was going to be going away. And I had some areas in the river that historically have been good for me when the weather is normal. So what I did was the first 2 days of the tournament, I caught all but I think one of the fish that I weighed from Rodman Reservoir, fishing those deeper channel swings with that zeroed in pattern that I had 28 pounds the first day, freaking giant bag. Had about 25 or 6 up there in Rodman. Then I called one time with a 5+ down on the river. But then the day 2, I think I caught them all up there. And then day 3, those fish finally got out of those channel bends. Really a struggle, really a grind for me. I had 13 pounds that third day. Kind of the field caught up to me a little bit, but then on that last day I was able to catch I think 17 and a half pounds is what it was that last day, and it was able to I caught most of those on the river. I caught 1 or 2 in Rodman, but not in those deep channel swings. So the point of that story is to tell you that in order to win a 4-day event and win a Bassmaster Elite Series event, you have to stay ahead of the fish and what they're going to be doing as that tournament progresses. That is how tournaments get won. I'll give you the other Bassmaster Elite Series tournament is more of the area method, I'll call it. So here we go. I'll give you one that happened last year. Ed Lochran. Ed Lochran won on Lake Champlain, a lake that he knows very well. Well, Ed missed a couple tournaments during the year, had to take a medical exemption, had some kidney stones in that area of his body, right behind the reel, actually, but none. The kidney stones are good now. He got those cleared up and was able to pass them and so forth. But he was able to come back and fish Lake Champlain. He was not fishing for points because he was already out. So he fished an area at Lake Champlain that he had never been to before. Last day of practice, went down there to the area and caught some big ones and thought maybe there's something to this. And the first couple days, he was figuring out this area. And it was like, it's not like one spot, it was like an area. He was figuring out where those fish were relating to this grass and so forth in that particular area. Well, day 4 rolls along, those areas are kind of done. They're kind of done. They'd been beat up, they weren't producing anything, the fish were getting smaller, and he had found a little hump that he wanted to check on. He rolls up to that hump the last day, drops his trolling motor. As he pulls up to that hump and drops his trolling motor, he looks on the graph and sees a couple dots back there behind the boat, throws behind the boat, catches a good one, turns around, proceeds to catch the majority of his weight the last day and ends up winning by 1 ounce. So he was able to fish a big area, but then that last day he had to adapt and kind of stay along with a new area, new kind of group, and boom, he was able to win that tournament. So going back to not the St. John's, but going back to the other tournament that I won that tournament was out in California at the California Delta. It was wild because my practice was awful. It was super, super cold, super cold. It was hard to even get a bite. I think I fished 2 practice days with 0 bites. After those 2 practice days, I went to one area, and believe it or not, it was kind of warming up in the afternoons, and it looked like I had seen a couple fish trying to come up and spawn in a couple of these little offshoots off the main river near Italian Slough. The other deal that I had found was I had gotten 2 punching bites, and there was a bunch of hydrilla. Italian Slough's is like a couple miles long. I want to say 4 or 5 miles long. Don't hold me to that. You can drop down there in comments if you know exactly how long Italian Slough is. But there's hydrilla lining the entire slough on both sides. It's deep water. It's the deepest water in that whole area of the river. And I knew that wintertime, cold temperatures, tidal fisheries, those bass like to be in the deepest water possible. Kind of like the St. John's example, that water got cold. They want to be in that deeper water. But those fish were really hard to get to bite because I knew they were there, but they do not like cold water. Those fish was able to figure out that punch and bite in Italian Slough. But let's back up. Day 1, I caught a tiny keeper on a crankbait leading into one of those little spawning pockets. Caught that tiny keeper, threw him in the box, went for hours without a bite, went into those little spawning pockets. In the afternoon, lo and behold, there's a 4+. Pushing 5 pounds, two flips with a little creature bait, got that fish in the boat. I was fishing just along that stretch right through there where those fish were coming up, looked like they were trying to spawn, caught another decent one, and then went down a little bit further, saw another one, caught it off bed. It was probably another 4+, pushing 5. That day I had 4 fish that weighed 15 pounds and something, was in like 10th place, really tough. There was another bedfish I was working on. I could not get it to bite, and that would have been my 5th one. I'd have probably had 20 pounds. I'd have been right there close to the lead. But didn't get it. It's okay. Story worked out great. The next day, it stayed cold. Those spawning fish were nowhere to be seen. No cranking bites. I ended up going to Italian Slough. Just started getting bit right off the bat. And like every 45 minutes, I kept getting another bite. So after day 2, I had 21 pounds. I called a couple times, and I told Ish, I said, man, I think I can win this tournament, because I think out of that 21 pounds, I had 2 7-pounders, and I had caught one of the 2 bites I'd got in practice was a 7-pounder in there. Those big ones are in there, And I ended up just saying, okay, that's it. So, I mean, it was a big area. So I just kept a flipping stick in my hand. I kept alternating different baits, but the adjustment that I made, in my opinion, 100% is the reason that I won that tournament. The adjustment that I made was that days 1 and 2, I was punching and flipping with braided line because it's matted vegetation. Ish, Iaganelli, and myself, we were talking about how can we get more bites in this really, really tough environment. I switched to 25-pound fluorocarbon and 20-pound fluorocarbon on those punch sticks in that punch baits in that hydrilla. And I went down to a BB cricket, the smallest flipping bait that I could find. That was, I still caught some on like the beaver, because we didn't have a D-bomb back then, what didn't exist. But the beaver and the BB cricket were what I used with that fluorocarbon. Absolutely got more bites with that fluorocarbon on days 3 and 4, and ended up winning that tournament by an ounce over Skeet Reese, the hometown favorite, and he caught really good bags every day. But that adjustment was what I made. So I talked about the adjustment here was more of a location, the fish moved situation. In the California Delta, it was a bait adjustment. Like I told you about Ed's situation, he made a slight location and technique change in order to win that tournament. Now let me give you a couple other quick examples. I like showing the bass times with the on there. This is Jay Shakura. This is the one where he caught 1 million pounds of smallmouth. It was, I believe it's still the record for a 4-day event. Caught 1 million pounds of smallmouth on the St. Lawrence River. Shakura, he's quiet, but he carries a big stick. I mean, I should say a big bag, not really a big stick, but he carries a big bag most of the time. Very, 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 very good fisherman. Very good with the forward-facing sonar. But his deal that he figured out to be able to catch these giant smallmouth, not only did he find a good area, he was fishing, near Chameau Bay in that area on Lake Ontario, but there were other anglers in the area. It's not like he had anything to himself. In watching the show and then watching him and hearing him talk about that win, he figured out a technique that was getting those smallmouth that he was seeing, getting a higher percentage of those to bite than other people. Now, I think a lot of people are starting to do that now. That little technique was, he was ripping that. He would throw the drop shot, get the smallmouth to look at it, and then he would rip it. He would rip it up in the air, and then the smallmouth would bite it on the way back down. And he found that was triggering those big smallmouth better than anybody else, and better than anybody else in that area. I mean, nobody knows better locations than both of the Johnstons up there on the St. Lawrence and Lake Ontario. Nobody. But Shakura knew how to get those fish to bite a little bit better, and that's how he was able to take that title and win that tournament. It was because he made the adjustment of a technique and how he was fishing. I'm telling you, it didn't have any. He could have probably had like 5 different baits on that drop shot, and they would have all had the same result. He was working it correctly in order to win that tournament. That was the deal for him. So I'll give you one more example. Luke Palmer. I think the cat is out of the bag a little bit on his little tricks that he figured out for a Santee Cooper. And what he did here at Santee Cooper, he was catching spawning fish off of cypress trees. In particular, one cypress tree that had been really good to him. I don't remember the exact percentage of fish that he caught off around this one particular cypress tree, but he was not visually looking at those sight fish. He was taking his forward-facing sonar, and I have not confirmed whether it was in perspective or forward. I think that it was probably in perspective, kind of similar to the way Scott Martin showed the world how to do that at Lake Okeechobee this past year in that open that he blew out around 1 million other anglers using that forward. But that was a technique and a little tweak to what he was doing that allowed him to stay on top. So it was really a combination of having like a super sweet spot. And I mean, he caught other fish in the area, but he would fish in that area, catch one here, 2 here and there. Then he would come back to that one tree, and if there was one set up, he would post up, drop the power poles, catch that fish, or 2 or 3. So he said sometimes there would be 2 or 3 on that bed at one time, and he would just keep fishing until he would catch each one of them. And you know, one of the things, going back to the bait idea, one of the coolest things about his win, about Luke's win, was when I was reading and listening to him talk about why he won and what baits he was using. He was using a little Yum hog bait, woolly hog bait, something like that. Little baby destroyer type looking bait. He had multiple different size weights on that bait. That was really all he was using. He had these multiple different size weights. He said some of the bass wanted it falling a little bit slower. Some of them wanted it falling a little bit faster. So he was just kind of giving them the old 1, 2, 3 punch with those different weights. I don't remember the exact weights. I think the lightest one was like a 3/16, like a 5/16, and then I don't know if it was like a 3/8 or a quarter or a half. So it had a range of different weights on that bait, and he was kind of mixing it up, and was able to utilize the combination of the technology, a special area, and there were other guys in that area. I mean, I fished past him one day. I know, like almost right where that is. I fished past him one day of this tournament. There were other guys fishing all these same trees that he was fishing. He just understood which ones they related to a little bit better, was a little more patient, was a little more dedicated, and he used that technology to get that extra advantage in order to win that tournament. So that's kind of a quick little synopsis on how you win a Bassmaster Elite Series event. Pretty wild. I know there's all kind of different examples that we can talk about. I mean, we can talk about Ott Defoe's win on Fort Loudon down there in the Classic. If he didn't get that information from Keith Poche about going to that one dock and throwing the chatterbait, Ott would not have won. Jacob Wheeler would have won that tournament. I mean, there's all kind of special scenarios, but if he would have made that adjustment, Ott would have on his own, he would have had to, it would fall in line with some of these other wins to where you have to adjust over a multi-day tournament in order to win. Because what Ott was doing was the deal when it's cold, fishing the ends of those gravel points. That's what he was doing when he was just worming that vibrating bait. That was the deal when it's cold. When it got warmer, those fish came up off the bottom. They went to like the mouths of pockets, the mouth of other areas. They came up in the water column. They got off the bottom, so he was not able to catch them as well. Wheeler was able to stay on them, but not quite good enough. Defoe was able to take that little bit of information, run with it, throw that chatterbait along the docks there around that run marina, and just crushed them on that last day. Apparently they were running out there like damn sharks, or like those tarpon when you feed them off the dock down there at Key West. That's what it was like with this chatterbait. It's what it looked like. So that's kind of how these big tournaments get won. It's about making adjustments over long periods of time. And if you have any questions or comments, drop them down there. If you have any examples of things like this that you've seen, drop them down there. It's a cool discussion. I appreciate everybody watching, and we'll talk to you next time.